So, Matt, I'm handing over to you for a great discussion.
Thank you, Matt, also. I'll just let you know what Matt, to calm me down before this session, because he's a sensitive and kind man, he politely told me that my moustache looks even worse with these headphones on. So that's made me feel very at ease, and I greatly appreciate that. What's really exciting is that we've covered off some great kind of accessibility features, off the bat in terms of content delivery here, in terms of the translations. If those of you are not able to get headphones, you can download the Interprify app, which, as Matt said, is absolutely fantastic. So that's a cracking start, and we're all really positive to see that. Pardon? No, your microphone's not on. Check. That's another thing we should have checked.
Yeah, how you doing now?
Good.
Perfect. I'm going to jump in on the moustache quickly. Matt's been gathering donations to grow his moustache for November. We've got to the point now where he's getting so many comments about it.
Not positive.
Actually, we're going to flip it round. So if you wanted to donate to Matt's Movember fund, we're going to shave it off tomorrow if we can double the amount that he got so far.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah,
if you follow Matt on LinkedIn,
that.
you'll be able to find out.
That's protecting my poor wife, who's had to endure this for the
and
last
us,
20
we're looking
days.
at you constantly.
Yeah, well, anyway, okay, so what are we going to be covering off today? So I'm going to click my clicker, and we'll go to me, hopefully, now. So we're going to be talking about making events truly accessible. We're going to be focusing on the digital elements of technology and focusing on design, but I tend to wander a little bit, so we might cover all forms of accessibility. We will encourage you to ask questions, which we can cover off at the end. And like I said, we're happy to wander a little bit on the accessibility topic. We've got some experts with us.
Definitely, it's going to be conversational, right?
It'll be conversational, so guide us with your questions and we'll cover off all that we can do. We're going to start off by just explaining one at a time why it's important to us, okay? And accessibility is important to me for a number of reasons. They're fairly blunt. I'll be fairly succinct with them. The first one is commercial. When you've got a commercial decision, if you alienate people that want to use your product or platform or can benefit from your services, that's not a smart commercial decision. So we make accessibility decisions from the technology, from a platform perspective, from a commercial perspective. That's probably the least pleasant of the reasons that we're going to give. We are always making an ethical decision to make the right choices and to encourage the right decisions being taken from an accessibility. So I think ethically we look to try and make the right decisions, and that's certainly something that's really key to me as well. And the final one is personally. I'm someone who has neurodivergent requirements and needs. I always struggle with that word. They seem to find a really complicated word. I forget words. I forget really easy words, and then they choose one which I can say it 10 different ways each time. So did I say it right?
Yes. You're neuro-spicy, right?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's nice, isn't it? But we're normalising it, which is progress, which is positive. But yeah, I am neurodivergent, and one of my children has exactly the same superhuman capabilities that I have, which is being really easily distracted. I could wander off at any moment. I have this thing where I can hear conversations simultaneously, and I can just drift to one that I find interesting, which is incredibly embarrassing. So if I do that, I apologise, bear with me. Will's been around me for 40 plus years, steering me in the right direction when I do it. So if he's tapping me, that's why. And I've probably waffled enough, so I'm going to go on to introduce...
I feel like pressure's on. We better not bore you, or we won't have anyone to ask us questions.
Let's get on to the good stuff. Gabby, let's chat about you. Why is this an important topic to you?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'm just going to start off by introducing myself visually. So I'm Gabby. I'm a brown woman with long, dark hair. Got red lipstick on. I always wear my red lipstick. Helps me feel a bit more confident. And I've got like a velvety burgundy. Apparently that's a new burgundy suit on. And why is this important to me? I think because both personally and professionally through the work that I do, I really get to see the impact of people being excluded, either through my experience and things that might have happened throughout my career or in communities. I've recognised that. And now the more I talk to people and the more people who come and talk to me and share their experiences, I understand what it's like for them when they feel they're excluded. And that is kind of like my main driver, and it's what really keeps me excited about what I do and wanting to make the world a better place for people. Because at the end of the day, adapting a few things, making things a bit better, a bit easier for people shouldn't be that hard. And I think we've all got the capacity to do that if we just think a little bit harder around it. And my mission really is just to help facilitate that and help organisers think about how they can create inclusive environments for everyone, no matter their background or identity, so that we can all have the best experience possible.
I'm not going to constantly throw compliments at everyone, but what I've got from meeting you for the last couple of weeks is that you take complex things and simplify them for me, and you also make complex things positive. So you're an advocate for positive change through what you're doing. So, and I think that's progress. So often when we talk about inclusivity, it seems to be a bit of a pass or fail, rather than focusing on what people are doing well, and the fact that so many people have come here to watch this session is progress itself, and you're an advocate for that, and a brilliant one. So yeah, keep doing it.
Thank you.
Will, there'll be less pleasantness about Will. I've known him for too long to be pleasant.
No compliments.
Come on.
Okay, so I am a UX designer by trade. So I work in the event tech industry now, but my background is just designing products generally, so across the web. So I've been involved in lots of usability studies. You test products with people, and you try and get as broad a spectrum of people testing those products as possible. I've been an accessibility advocate for my whole career, trying to get those tools into the technology that I'm building. The 4 boys that you can see, or / men that you can see behind me.
It's like a boy band.
Yeah, and the moody guy in the middle. The moody guy in the middle is me. I'm quite grumpy generally. But 2 of them, the 2 guys on this side, they look quite similar. They're actually both autistic children, so it's very important to me generally. So my career is design. My family is very sort of neurodivergent in makeup. I'm gonna start with a bit of a question. I don't know if we use lanyards a lot in the event industry. Hands up if you know what this lanyard means. Okay, so not too many. This basically means I've got hidden disabilities. I shouldn't be wearing this. It's actually my wife's. So I do not have hidden disabilities, so I won't be walking around the event space with this on later today. But I just wanted to kind of gauge how many people would know what that means. So if you see someone with this, you know that actually they might have some additional needs that you need to take account of when you're talking to them, or when they are, particularly if they come up to your stand, and you might think about offering these to people when they attend your events and things like that. But so it's very important to me generally, and it runs through everything that I do in my life.
I suppose in the being inclusive, I should compliment you as well. It's a bit harder. It's more challenging. No, we at CrowdCons, I don't want to cover too much about us, because you can do that by coming to see our stand. But we've got a creative director, a UX designer leading our product. And so normally in tech companies, you'll have like a CTO-led organization. We have great software engineers, but we are a design-led team, which enables us to make these decisions from a design perspective, and the tools that we give clients to be more inclusive and have genuine accessibility across their technology. And you're pretty good at it. Was that?
Let's skip
Let's
over
get
that
on.
bit.
Let's get on.
Let's
Come
go.
on.
That's the compliment. You got it
Next
in.
bit, next
Yay.
I did it. It was hard work. Look, Gabby, let's start off, because you gave me the answer to this, and I was like, yay. What do we mean when we say inclusivity? Let's start with just covering that off. It's an important kick-off, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think when we were having a bit of discussion, we were looking at how sometimes inclusivity and accessibility gets used interchangeably, and I like to try and keep them actually a little bit separate. And the way I like to view it as is seeing inclusivity as the trunk of a tree, and then the branches are the different aspects of our experiences, identities that come off of that. So whether that is our age, our life stage, our gender identity, our marital status, our caregiving, all of those things, and we all have these different needs, and they all come off these branches. If we want to be inclusive, we try and cover as many of those as we possibly can for people. And most of the time, it's not like we have to think about lots of individual things. Most of the time, it's just about having conversations, showing a bit of empathy, listening, and asking what could make something a bit better, a bit easier for people. But just because we are accessible, or we like have an accessible tool or piece of tech or accessible venue or event, doesn't mean that we're inclusive, because there's other things like representation and equity that come into play there as well. So that's how I like to kind of view it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. We looked at some of them were, it was pretty shocking actually looking at it, because you don't really consider the percentages of people with lots of hidden requirements. And yeah, it was the age inclusivity. I spoke to my dad about this one in particular, as a 78-year-old man, and he said he genuinely feels forgotten. He's still out there in the workplace, and he said nobody's considering him when he goes out there.
I think
nobody.
Gen Z, there's quite a lot of similarities between the two ends of the spectrum. Us sort of millennials in the middle. But there are, captions and social media having captions by default. I know a lot of Gen Zers who actually watch TV with their captions on just because they prefer it. They might miss a word here and there. There's a lot of films that there's mumbling in. They do have, they want shorter form content. They want, sessions like this. They want short, snappy pieces of information. So I think there's a lot of crossover between the two ends, actually.
So how do you, it's not what we're talking about here, but it's just triggered a question. How can we make sure that we're mindful when we're delivering content like this up on stage that we are appeasing that Gen Z who digest content in a different way? Because I have one PowerPoint presentation. We're delivering one 45-minute session. It is being recorded. It will be put into bite size, I would imagine, and be more digestible. But, how can we be more inclusive from delivering content? I think Gabby possibly...
I was going to say what you said about them looking at ways of repurposing some of that content, because we still want to have the conversation and be able to get across our messages. So I guess it's then how we repurpose that. But also, there are a lot of sessions now that are becoming a bit shorter, 20-minute sessions, for example, because I think everyone's attention spans are going down a little bit. Even mine is.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to look at some engagement and audience engagement figures around that and get a bit more specific around what is the ideal length of time to have these conversations. I don't know.
My kids have the translations even when they're watching YouTube. So
yeah.
I do as well.
With the volume up full blast and these short reels on YouTube, when my brain is just I can't cope with this.
Yeah.
So that's obviously really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people read books and listen to podcasts, and I'm like, How?
God.
How?
Hey, I wouldn't be able to absorb
I
the
can
information.
do that. No
way.
But others, I guess they can. All our minds work differently, which is the beautiful thing about it.
Micro-learning, things like that.
Yeah.
But I do like that's exactly the right point. Is you can do both. If you capture long form, then you can chop it into short form. So you can do both. With a bigger bit of content, you can do multiple things.
We're going to bring it back to design now a little bit, and focus on some basic. I don't know how basic it is, Will, but that's what we've classified it as.
Well, it should be the basics, to be honest. Like, if you are building event technology, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can use technology if you're a planner or if you're building events. But in terms of the basics of building any piece of software, you should be looking at, anyone who's got additional needs, usually, I'm not going to say always, will have their browsers set up to cater for those needs. If the technology doesn't adhere to the standards that are out there, then you've got a problem. So you need browser compatibility. They might have screen readers. They might have their font size might be larger. They could have all sorts, and they're probably going to be set up like my children have Dragon software, and they have blue backgrounds rather than white backgrounds on their Word documents and things. They're able to adjust the contrast of areas. The other sections is like making sure that you can navigate with your voice and your keyboard. So we are developing some tools at the moment to help planners who are neurodivergent as well, or have additional needs, to be able to build applications with their voice. Now that's going to be useful for everyone, but like we want to. A lot of our accessibility features we try and build in different ways. There are some sort of slightly more nuanced bits that you can do. Now I think everyone knows about alt tags. That's essential for screen readers, for visual impairments and things like that. But there is also like ARIA tags are very important as well. So we've got, for example, in our software, in the Q&A module, the submit button is an icon. And if you are in registration, it's a plus button if you want to add another delegate to your registration for group registration. Those could be very confusing if your screen reader is just reading them based on alt tags. So ARIA tags give you context, give you a little bit extra as well. So there is some things that we need to do as event tech professionals to make sure our software is being built in the right way.
We're not sitting up here as people that are doing it perfectly, because
That's a very important point. Yeah.
We're definitely not.
Yeah.
We were chatting through our tech stack and we saw some glaring kind of errors that we've made from a design perspective that we need to reflect on. You know, even today when we were setting up some of the tech, I was like, oh, blimey, I'm going to be on stage and we've completely missed that. That's absolutely ridiculous. So we're not sitting here as people that are perfect, but we're genuinely trying. And I think a question for yourself is, there seems to be lots of reasons why people are doing these things and making this change, either because you've got to be seen to be doing it, or we're accountable, like we get audited to do accessibility, feature-based product development, or you could be passionate about it. But does it matter what the driving force is, as long as it's being done?
Kind of, yeah. I think that the motivation behind implementing something that is to make it more inclusive and more accessible. Ideally, we want it to come from a place of, we know why we want to do it, and we're going to do it because we care. But at the end of the day, as you're saying, as long as it's getting done, then at least that is a good kind of point. But what tends to happen with that is that it's less sustainable. And it tends to not go across all facets of like the business or the design. It's just like checkboxing for this, so ticking that off. So it's not as holistic, I think, in its approach. And you can tell, I think, when somebody has just done something as a checkbox. So it's there, but it's not as good. But it's better than nothing.
You used a word earlier, which I think is like critical to kind of making the right decisions. That's empathy. And I think if you must have empathy. If you have empathy, your outcome will be better because you'll genuinely care about the outcome. You learn to understand it better.
I would flip that back around to you, who's somebody who's running an organisation. So if we're looking at those stats earlier when we're talking about the sort of 80-20 rule, should you build something for the mass and then sort of, the 20% are potentially edge cases. If you're looking at it from a purely commercial point of view, it has to be an ethical decision to cater for the 100%?
I think when being in the position I'm at board level, I don't know if we've got members of my board here, but members of my board are always sympathetic to me. They understand what I need. When we're doing budget variants, we have to deal with really complex things that have to be delivered in a certain way for me, and they are always mindful of it. So they show, at board level, I'm being shown empathy. When you go to your team, they will always know they can say anything to you and come to you with any idea. Yep. So there's that kind of acceptance of openness.
Well, you have to build a culture that accepts that sort of thing. If I came to my team with an idea that I was going to be sort of dictatorial and say this is the way it's going to be done, I don't want anyone's opinion, you go away and build it, then we're going to get into trouble. You need to foster a culture which is making sure that people can speak up about accessibility and they can be advocates for accessibility. We've got two of our developers. I mean, software developers generally are, I think the percentages would be a lot higher than what we just saw on the board. We've got a couple of neurodivergent guys. We've got colorblind developers who, as a designer who puts things in front of them, they will always pick me up that you've done. They look like the same colour to me, to be honest. Like, you need to go away and do that better. You need to build a culture that is people are able to speak up.
Yeah, just to quickly add on that. And that's something I've seen with the speed of people trying to demonstrate inclusivity and accessibility in events, is that the culture bit has been forgotten. And actually, that's the easy bit. If you get the culture piece right, then everything that you're designing and producing is going to naturally feed into that, because people have been open and feel comfortable to share that. Actually, do you know what? I think we could do this a bit better if we tried looking at doing it this way. If you don't have a culture that allows that, then innovation is going to be really challenging. So I think culture and workplace culture is a really big piece that sometimes we miss for the end product. Culture
is so critical to design, and you mentioned the 80-20, like Pareto's law earlier. I don't think design works in that. I know we're told everything works. I'm not sure true design does, because true design is taking information from every single point of contact, whether it's the organizer, the end user, your internal team, your client, the commercial decision maker. It seems almost too complex to follow that law. I'm sure we'd work out a way of doing it somehow, but
You were touching on something, Will, actually, which I don't know if you were deliberately skirting, but I'm going to bring it back up, so
Oh,
I'm
God.
sorry. But you kind of touched on the ethical and moral versus a commercial side of that. And I guess a lot of people might be interested in, like, well, if it's going to cost a bomb, like, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I'd like to know your thoughts a bit more on that, actually.
I'll give my thought, but yours will be better. Doing things the right way doesn't take longer. You know, particularly making the right design decisions. But definitely it's better you answering this than me. But commercially, just making the right decisions doesn't cost more money.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we're building a feature, say in our product, rather than, I guess, culturally we are more build the thing right to an MVP level, and that includes accessibility. You have to include it from the ground up. You can't think of it as a separate stream of work. If you've got, the best practices in software development, you are doing it from the get-go. You are, rather than going, right, let's build the feature, right, let's do all the accessibility jobs that we need to do, because then those things can be, you always run out of time when you're building software, so you sort of, then they get pushed to one side. And the other thing is, if you are looking at edge cases, don't look at the accessibility features as an edge case. They are not in the 20%. It's actually the feature has to be accessible, and then what can we do on top of that? What can we add to the minimum viable product?
Let's go on to, because we want to give you guys some tips to take away that you can do. You're probably doing many of them anyway, so I'm not suggesting that we're really innovating. We're just trying to give you some guidelines and things you can focus on. So, Will?
Yeah, this is going to kind of build behind me, but I'm not going to go through these things one by one. But as a UX designer, there are things, when you are building your pages, most of the event app pieces of software that you'll come across today when you're speaking to people will allow you to build pages in certain ways for your app and sort of construct things. The things you need to really think about this is for everyone. This is useful for conversion generally in terms of user experience and page design. Think about your negative space. Don't worry about how long your page is. The fold is, everyone probably knows about the fold. Don't worry about the fold. That's a thing of the past. Like, people are happy to scroll through websites, especially if they're a nice place to be. So don't overload people with content. Color theory is an interesting one, because there are different color palettes is obviously going to suit other people, and the events industry can potentially be guilty of trying to be as loud as possible, trying to be in your face, trying to come across like you're the party. The sort of more muted palettes do suit more sort of autism and things like that. But you do have to be careful with muted pastel tones when you're talking about color blindness. So you do need to be careful and use the tools that are out there for you to use. Typography is a really important one. So we've got lots of tools in our platform to help you adjust line height, alignment of copy. So center aligned copy can sometimes be quite hard to follow because you don't have the margin down the outside. Font size and formatting. Now, when I say formatting, it's really important. The line length of content should never be more than 68 characters. Ideally, you are not having lines that go all the way across the website. So we've got margins and we've got width controls and things like that you can make sure. So you can look at your software and see if you can adjust those bits. You can always do them in custom CSS and things like that if you wanted to. Language is obviously the easy one. Like, make sure we're not using too many big words like you struggled with earlier. Unambiguous. And then the usage of icons and breaking up the content into little bite-sized chunks, because if screen readers are really good at kind of jumping between icons, and if you're using those ARIA tags that we talked about earlier, then you can put a little bit of context around the icon or the image that you've used to break up the content, and you can kind of jump between things, and visually you can just work your way through the page.
Are we ever at danger of alienating the majority of people to focus on a minority?
We're in danger of it, but I think probably if you flipped it around the other way, that I don't think you're not going to alienate let's take the color palette, for example. You're not going to alienate the people that struggle with bright, loud colors, lots of animation, lots of movement on a page. If you cater for the 100%, the people who are going to struggle with it, you're not gonna convert less. I think probably it's better to be inclusive with your design rather than you're actually alienating the smaller chunk of people rather than the bigger people who will be fine with it.
And when you're working with your clients, do you find people considering these elements, looking at these different kind of tips?
Not so much, and that's probably why they come to me in the first place, is because they want that kind of support, I guess. So I don't want to judge like everyone exhibiting here and all those other companies, but not so much in my opinion. And I do something that's a little bit horrible, actually. So anyone can do this, by the way. You can just Google like accessibility checker for your website, and just literally you can do an accessibility checker. It does it for you. It's super quick. You just put the URL in, and I often just send that as a first piece to my client. I'd be like, you could be up for a lawsuit. So this is what you need to be looking at with your website. So and that hasn't really answered your question, but I thought it'd be a useful tool to share. We're working with clients. It's something that they're starting to look at and consider more. But I think it's still a case of those visible things that we can do to show we look more inclusive or accessible, that people are highly focused on. I always think of that analogy of when it's the work that you do that no one sees that's the most important. And stuff like this, people probably won't even notice like that you've used these specific icons or typography or the negative space, unless it like really impacts and affects them. And so people think, it's not really going to bother, but actually it's super important. So I think it's about helping people to kind of recognise that, and that's really my role, is to help companies recognise actually, these are things that are really important to people that we need to be looking at.
Do I need a UX expert or designer to do these things? Because that would be a concern, because not every team has that in-house.
Well, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't do. If you choose the right technology that will allow you enough control to do it, and you know your audience well, and you know that you want to, if you're an advocate for accessibility, you want to design for everyone, then I know we're going to talk about a couple of bits that we do in a minute without being too sort of navel gazing. Then, we build in controls to allow non-designers to do this sort of thing, and if you're using, I don't care what technology you're using, if you want to be inclusive, talk to your provider. If you're going around trying to choose the software to work with, then ask them what features they do that mean you don't need a designer or developer to work with you.
We're going to a couple of videos playing in the background, some of the things we're focusing on. I think just a quick disclaimer. You're in a really fortunate place, because every single event technology company, and they're going to be approaching these things in different ways. We're approaching it, we're going to show a couple of ways. It's not necessarily the best way, it's just the way that we're doing it. It'll be a great opportunity to go and challenge everyone else, and they'll all be doing great stuff, and find out what they're doing from an accessibility perspective, and how they're supporting the organizer from an accessibility perspective, and the end user from an accessibility perspective. But Will, do you just want to cover off a couple of the things that we've got behind us?
We know that we're talking about the delegate a lot in this session, but planners have, we want to be inclusive for the planners as well. So this is our back end. So this is our CMS where you actually build your tools. Dark mode's a really important feature for people who really struggle with light. So not to bring it back to my family and stuff, but my kids, when they've been at school all day with looking at a fluorescent screen and under fluorescent lights, they have to have a sleep. They have to come home, they're exhausted. So if you're planning an event and you're really into it and you're spending hours and hours doing it, we want to make sure that you've got an environment that you feel is a little bit less visually overstimulating. The other bit is what I was talking about earlier, being able to adjust negative space and margin and font size and things like that, that you can do that without a developer. So you've got sliders, you've got controls that you can actually use to adjust your page and make it as nice as possible.
The biggest accessibility feature from my perspective, as someone who's quite visual, is that everything I do, I see the effect of every change. It's alive. It's a WYSIWYG builder. So what you see is what you get. When you make an edit, you see it, which really helps. And then you can see it from every pathway as well, which is going to be equally as important. So you can click a button, which I don't know if it's visible there, which says, what does this look like for an attendee? What does it look like for a sponsor pathway? Without having to click onto multiple different pages or forms.
Yeah, and also I'm glad that you've spoken about the organiser as well, because it's just important making sure we're inclusive there, because I'm definitely dark backgrounds for everything on my phone, on my laptop. I'm not diagnosed as neurodivergent anyway, but that's something that's preferable to me. And it just shows that things can be preferable to other people without them necessarily specifically having, a diagnosis of being neurodivergent in a particular way. So it just shows, again, from a preference perspective, it can be really helpful for people.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's just all choices for everyone. It's just making sure that there's enough out there that you can make the decisions yourself.
I'm going to click on to the next one. Will, do you want to cover these? I think this is quite cool. Come and check it out on the stand. There's the plug. And
yeah, so don't worry, we're not going to bore you going through our whole platform. You can come and talk to us if you want to know more about the things we do. But this is the last one. It's another one that's organizer-led. So you're able to make decisions on behalf of your delegates. You can start from a single point that you think is best for your audience. But we, as a company, have a culture of making sure that we build the same tools for organisers as we do for delegates to be able to control on the front end. So, for example, you can see your registration form can be single page, section per page, or question per page. On the front end, we have exactly the same control for the delegate. So if you've got a screen reader and it's going through if you've got complex registration and it's going through one question at a time, now you as an organiser might actually go, okay, I'm going to just make people do one question at a time. But actually, if you've got a screen reader reading your screen, you might want one question at a time. You might just be a bit overwhelmed by the registration. And you just want people to, I just want to do one question. I know you love the sort of single question format, right? And I would probably prefer to scroll through a whole page. So there's little bits you can do and speak to your event tech provider and see what other things they can offer.
It's a separate conversation or separate topic talking about how many questions we should have in registration in itself. I'm always an advocate of
although we do have some people
in
the audience who might be able to help.
Yeah, there probably is. But this is, for me, like we said, I like the question by question. There's a form builder called Typeform. They're absolutely brilliant. And it's conversational and it creates like a human element to it, which I much prefer from my perspective. But it's about preference, isn't it? It's about giving people the choice of how they want to receive information. That's the whole point of inclusivity and accessibility. And yeah, this is one of the things we're doing. But everyone will be doing different things. And go and check out what everyone's doing. And, they'll be doing great stuff as well. So let's have some takeaways for you. So organiser takeaways. Gabby, do you want to cover them off for us?
Yeah, I think it's really, if we're talking about selecting the right event technology and working with the right providers, I think it's about being really proactive in that research and that search, really getting to know the organisations and the companies and what their product actually is, and not just kind of picking the first, the most cost-effective one or the one that pops into your, into your email or whatever. And also, it is about knowing your audience, as you're saying. I totally agree with that. Like, what does your audience prefer? What do they need? Are we asking the questions? Are we collecting the data and designing everything or selecting the right tools based on that audience feedback, not what our preference is as an individual or as a company? Do you want me to go through them, or shall I go?
You give your thoughts on it as well.
So, ask your event tech supplier so definitely ask your event tech supplier to explain what accessibility standards is. Yeah. We need to be proactive again in asking the right questions and understanding the features that are available there. and actually leveraging those features. I think there's sometimes a lot of features sitting around that we're not really making use of or leveraging, or that might come down to onboarding. I don't know. I'm sure yours is fab. But I think that's really, really important. It's holding our suppliers to account, I think, and reselecting based on who can ask those questions.
Yeah, I mean, we should always be open to that conversation. You know, if you can't get on a phone call with your event tech supplier and ask about accessibility features, then maybe you need to think about finding a different one.
It's on so many more RFPs as a consideration now than it used to be. When we see them come in, it increasingly is a section of importance for people. So that's again progress.
There's a lot of legislation coming in. That's partly why, I imagine.
Yeah, will be. Will, from a tech perspective, what do we need to do? What do we all need to do?
So, like Gabby just said, just
You
hold
skipped my last one, and that was me.
Oh.
I was going to plug myself.
Oh, Gabby, sorry.
Yeah, do an audit.
It's because I've got a whiplash
No
on the neck.
worries, no
Struggling.
worries. Yeah, audit. Do an accessibility audit. So you can see what those barriers are and what you might be missing when it comes to the type of groups or individuals or people that you might be thinking about, and the types of products and services that you might be using. And you know, there's lots of great external companies who can do those sort of audits for you, who are specialists in digital accessibility or physical accessibility or venue accessibility. Definitely do your research. But of course, you can also come and find Diversity Alliance and join our inclusive event design community so that we can look at this in a bit more detail and help you, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, is to help.
Do people always know you're there, or do you do like secret shopper audits where you?
I should do secret shopper. Yeah, I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start doing that, everyone, from today. So, you know, I love that.
Don't start with our stand.
Yeah.
Fair.
Will, do you want to cover off the event tech kind of takeover?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it earlier, but just making sure that we are. This is for any organisation, but obviously I'm going to talk from a software point of view. Just fostering a culture where accessibility can be a conversation all the time. Making sure that you don't just have advocates within your. So, like, I've worked with a few companies where they've got an accessibility advocate. Like, that's a job. I'm not disparaging the fact that it's a good job, but really that should run through your whole organisation, and people should be celebrated for their differences and feel like they can talk about them. And if you're building something, if you're using software to build an event app and someone in your organisation is reviewing it for you, then allow them to speak up and have a thick enough skin to actually take that on board and try and do a little bit better. So I'd probably say that the takeaways is just make sure that people are having the conversation.
2 ears, 1 mouth, isn't it?
2 ears, 1 mouth.
Listen and learn.
I mean, you can run. Look, we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? It's there should be time. So as someone who's from a background of building software products and having a section dedicated to user research and usability studies, where you're behind a mirror, you're running things with people who are trying to use the software, doing that study, going in and iterating your software, changing it again, over and over again, thinking that takes a lot of time. I'm sure anyone planning an event at the moment has a fairly long lead time before their event happens. So you could actually be running those user experience, usability studies to find out where those problems are with your tech.
So you have the time, but potentially not the expertise, and that's where you can bring in experts.
Well, I would say, bring in experts, but also, as you're saying, it's a user experience. So bring in people with lived experience as well to test your products. So whoever it's for, get them in to do that.
Oh,
definitely.
you will never find out more than actually when you watch someone use what you're trying to build. Like, I cannot design a product that covers every base for everyone. I need to see people using it. One, to keep my ego in check, and the other one to make sure that we go away and build it properly for those people who actually need it.
I love those tests where you watch multiple people using it and you set the same objective and you see the way they get to it and you look at the differences of approach. It's absolutely fascinating.
And you only need 8 people, so you start to get a statistical significance drop off. So after about 8 users. So you only need to do a qualitative usability study with 5 to 8 people. So that would be enough for you to actually do a proper a proper UX study to see if your platform is working.
That's really, really good. Thank you. And thank you. I can see there's some questions coming in. I think Matt, but although he's a giant man, I've lost him. There he is. We found him. Matt was going to put some questions to us, so I'll skip that. I think we have a question. There we go, questions. But thank you so much for your questions, and keep them coming.
Right, there are a few. Thanks for open and honest discussion. The first question, trying to get up there. For event planners, are there specific checklists or resources you could recommend to help ensure our event tech software is fully optimized for accessibility and inclusivity? Is there a checklist? Is there a place they can go to see if they're doing the right thing?
I have got a cheeky checklist, but it's kind of for my purposes, but maybe I need to put that out there as a resource.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, in terms of accessibility rather than inclusivity, you can go to the WCAG and run that test on your front end of your website and see what score comes back. Now, we do that ourselves for our software, but we can only go so far, so we can make sure our software is as accessible as possible. You have so much control over the output of the event app itself that you could make it less accessible by using the tools and things like that. So, yeah, you can run that. The WCAG is a decent resource anyway to kind of have a look at what the standards are to building and using software.
The failure rate on that is absolutely staggering, though, as a global website coverage.
Yeah, you've got to think of it as a sliding scale. So it's a bit like Ofsted, if you like. At the moment, there is a AA or AAA rating. If you think of a good, outstanding and needs improvement school, there is a whole report that goes behind that, and they might be doing some really great things but need improvement. If you are an A, you might be doing some really good things, and you might have some really good tools. You don't dismiss them just because they don't get a AAA rating.
We should look at how we can QC tick list to make sure that the output from our clients is leveraging the capabilities of the software. That's something that we should look at.
I mean, it would be a nice little takeaway. You don't want to give away the farm, obviously, but like just things that people can look at when they're planning, like outside of technology, I guess, because it's a much bigger industry than just the event app or the registration that you might be doing.
Well, that is what the inclusive event design community is going to be all about, actually, funnily enough, in that it's going to be sharing of resources, tools, peer-to-peer learning as well, so we're able to respond and answer each other's challenges and each other's questions as well. So we're all kind of contributing to this resource a little bit, I guess, and it will be leveraged by the power of community, really. And yeah, of course, things like this, resources will go in as part of the toolkit for this community as well. But I think learning from each other is the most important thing. It's key for that.
Education and collaboration leads to progression.
I think that probably leads on to the next question quite well as well, of how can we encourage clients to invest in inclusive event design? There's often a lack of understanding or desire. How can we guide them on a journey similar to how sustainability evolved? So it is about education and awareness, right? And sessions like this, I mean, you've talked a lot about specific technology, but there's so many areas in an event to cover, right? So what else could we be doing to help improve education?
Oh, go on, Gabby. Go on.
No, I'm so glad, 'cause I was about to say I did that thing that we did on the call. Remember when I said it goes in one ear out the other? And I was like, I wasn't listening to that question.
Yeah.
So you go, Will.
Okay. Well, hopefully, it's not an additional cost. So that, like, commercially, if you're trying to get advocacy in your organisation, you don't need to be spending extra money. You don't need to be doing it. So it is the education of making sure you are just doing the right things. Sometimes it is useful to have a designated advocate for accessibility within your organisation, even if it's a sort of ceremonial title. You can have someone who we have, for example, QC, quality control advocates within our organisation who every single app that goes out the door, whether they're self-board or not, goes through. You could have someone who said, maybe add that to your list of things that you're passionate about, and you'll be able to find someone in your organisation that has some sort of additional needs who would probably quite like to do that.
But also I feel it is about upskilling the client, and it's about doing it in a really subtle way, in that you know, we would, could be having a training, for example. Like, we would love to invite some of your team to join us for a training that we're actually holding, which aligns with, something that you are trying to implement with regards to inclusion and accessibility, and helping them feel like they're the leader in the journey as well. I think sometimes it's a little bit about how we're positioning it. Not like you should, but like should do it, but like, this is how we can do it, and actually this is how it's going to benefit you and your organisation. And actually you can take the lead on this. So I think that's the way that I like to approach it, is letting the client feel like they're almost, they've made the decision. It's not us giving advice. They've sort of, I'm gibbering on, yeah.
Well,
No, that's right.
empowering people and
That's
also
the one.
ultimately making people accountable for affecting change.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there because that is all we have time for. Can we have a round of applause, please, for Will, Matt and Gabby? Love discussions like this. I'm sure, Gabby, are you around for this afternoon as well? So if people want to come and chat to you and find out a bit more what you're doing, whereabouts are
I'm
you?
exhibiting over ESL, Event Sustainability Live, on the event industry news stand. Come and say hi.
So that's over in the sort of far
Top
corner
left-hand
down there.
corner down there.
And Matt and Will, C1, crowd comms,
C1.
straight down there, I think. You can't miss it because they're in these fetching teal
Are those branded
t-shirts.
socks as well? No, they.
Embarrassing.
I stole a pair before the show opened as well. So just, hey guys, thanks for the socks.
It's a little bit cringe.
I want a pair.
There,
though, to
there
be fair.
was one more question that came through. I do want to answer because I know this, but the sunflower lanyard, is it UK thing? Is it international?
I think it might be a UK thing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it might. I mean, there's lots of different lanyards out there for most. If you wanted to be more specific about the additional need, you could go and, if you just Google it, you'll be able to find the right lanyard for your need. And if you're a planner who's running a show like this, maybe there is an education piece for all of the people who are exhibiting, who might want to take account of this sort of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you again so much. Our next session here on the main stage is at 2 o'clock, and it's Education, Experience and Reliability, the next generation of SaaS. So that will be here at 2 o'clock. Thank you all very much.